Hey everybody, it's Bust with our Week 1 match of the Champion Draft Series. Today, we will be doing battle with the Windswept Warriors, headlined, coached, managed, run, played by Yasuo's best friend, Jay Sensational. And so, as I say at the beginning of all of our best of 3 content, if you want to skip ahead to the gameplay, feel free, go ahead. We're going to stop and talk a little bit about the rules of the event in case you didn't catch our draft video, a little bit about our draft and what we're trying to accomplish with this team. I'm going to get into a little bit of depth of Jay Sensational's lineup and what we can expect to come out of his team. And then lastly, the decks that we'll be bringing. And so again, feel free. I'm sure the battles will be great. We haven't had them yet, but I assure you it's going to be fantastic. And we're going to talk about some of this other best of 3 stuff beforehand. And so, to give a quick overview of the deck building within the Champion Draft Series, everything is focused in on the champions. And so, at its core, this is Riot Lock, as you would see in the best of 3 on the main game client, whether or not that is within the Daily Rumbles, the Ruthless Rumbles, or the Opens at the end of each season, to where you bring 3 decks. You cannot mirror any of the factions, and so you can't bring a PNZ Freylord and then another PNZ Freylord deck. You get to ban one of your opponents, they ban one of yours, and then the first player to win 1 game with each of their decks wins the match. And so the Champion Draft Series adds a little bit more champion-centricness to the top of that, and each of our decks we have to play the full 6 champions. So you can't have a deck that just has 3 copies of Jinx, and then the remainder of the deck is whatever you see fit. You must fill out the full 6 champion slots. It is the Champion Draft Series after all. And then you can only play factions in your deck that match the champions. And so if you want to play PNZ and Noxus and you have Jinx and Draven, good job. You're off to the races. You can do that. If you want to play PNZ and Noxus, but your champions are Jinx and Caitlyn, you're not allowed to do that. If you have a Caitlyn and Jinx deck, you're only allowed access to PNZ. And so while you may not have necessarily landed on the champion combinations you wanted, you can potentially substitute in some other champions to maybe get you those factions that you were actually looking for. And so in terms of our actual draft, I had a couple of big things that I was really looking to do. I wanted to be able to actually bring 1 concurrent timelines deck, and if I could bring 3 concurrent timelines decks, awesome. And so my kind of core tenet number 1 of the draft was I was going to go out of my way to snatch up the PNZ champions. I didn't particularly care which ones they were. If it really comes down to wanting to play Freylord PNZ timelines and we have Trundle with Ezreal, you can make it work, right? But I wanted to make sure that we could pick up those PNZ champions and ideally have the good ones. And so we spent a lot of early draft capital on acquiring Jax, so we could play something like Jax Vi, and then we picked up Caitlyn pretty early as well, along with Trundle. And so that kind of core number 1 was filled. We hit the Jax Vi, we hit the Trundle Caitlyn, and then we also have Jinx. And so if we really want to play 3 concurrent timelines decks, we can use Jinx as our 3rd PNZ champion. We didn't have to go too crazy with things like Ezreal in terms of making these decks work. Number 2, I was chasing after 3 separate 3rd decks that I was really hoping to have turn up. With Jinx, I really wanted to have Jinx Noxus so we could play Jinx Draven or Jinx Samira. Both Samira and Draven got taken quite early, so that was taken away from us. The next thing I wanted to be able to do was to be able to play Poppy Taric. I assumed that if we took Poppy, there's no real reason for anyone to draft Taric. I figured that would be something we could pick up as the last champion of our draft. Someone snatched Taric away with us. Oops, that's a problem. And last but not least, I wanted to draft Nocturne. I feel like Nocturne is a champion that we've brought to the past 2 opens. I really like the Nocturne Allegiance deck. And then I kind of have a feeling that in the upcoming set that's released in December, that Nightfall is going to get a boost, and I felt like Nocturne was kind of a surprise pick for that as well. Someone took Nocturne. It was actually our opponent today, Jay Sensational, and so that was taken away from us. So we did have to kind of pivot around to some different strategies that we were looking to do, but at its core, we're trying to do the timelines thing, and then off to the side, we did pick up this Lulu, Tristana, and Poppy to potentially do a lot of Bandle City shenanigans or some more combat-centric style decks that you can't quite do with the timelines. Okay, so Jay Sensational's draft, he managed to snag snagged Janna at pick 9. That was a big surprise to me. I mean, I guess we didn't take Janna and could have, but I was surprised that she made it that far. I thought that she was most certainly a pick 1 or pick 2 style of champion, but he was able to pick her up. The big thing for Jay Sensational is, of course, getting the Yasuo Katarina deck. I feel like that's something that he's going to bring every single match throughout the entirety of the event, as that is kind of his flagship thing. And otherwise, the things to really call out for me are the midpoints of the draft seem kind of up in the air. I don't really see how like Nocturne, Fizz, Galio, and Nico tie in with things like Janna and Karma. So it kind of leads me to think that maybe he just plans on playing Janna, Karma, and then some other kind of third deck. But there is some really interesting points at the very end with the Udyr and the Lee Sin. I was very surprised to see Lee Sin make it up here to pick like 92 or whatever it was that Jay Sensational was able to pick him up at. But it does give him access to a potential third Ionian deck and a lot of OTK power. Now, that OTK power that you typically get with Lee Sin needs access to overwhelms. You see it through Noxus, you see it through Targon with the Taric spell, but the big thing that he has access to now with that previous pick is going to be Udyr and the stances. And so there is a lot of potential for triple Ionia decks to come out. I'm just very curious what the thought process in this kind of midpoint of the draft was, if he wanted to snatch up some certain decks and then those core pieces got taken, or if there is some real build around kind of stuff centered on these champions. And so as I suspect most of these decks are going to come together at a really high level, like his base strategy to me looks like it would be Janna Karma along with Katarina Yasuo, and then some kind of Freylord deck that has Udyr in it, whether or not that is Udyr Galio, as we kind of see like the Galio champion strength decks in standard right now, if it's Udyr Nico for the Warden of the Tribes deck, or if it's Udyr along with Lee Sin for the OTKs, it's kind of tough to tell in that space. I think all of those are viable decks, but again, I'm kind of confused by the midpoint of this draft in terms of what he was trying to hit. Like if he was trying to say hit a Fizz OTK style of deck, but the other piece of the deck got taken along the way. I'm curious how that plays out, because in the draft we were kind of talking about this space at being at the edges. If you look at Grandpa Roji's draft, or the person that was at the first draft position did this a lot as well, to where if you want to draft Aatrox Kayn, it's very easy to do with like pick 1 and 2 or pick 9 and 10, because you only have to contest with one other person, right? And so if Jay Sensational really wanted to draft Aatrox Kayn, he could say take Aatrox at pick 5, and then 2 picks later get Kayn at pick 6, because the Grandpa Roji would have been the only one contesting him. And so I'm kind of curious what the thought process was across some of these middle champions, if these are things that we're really going to see, because if he wanted to directly draft decks, he should have been able to do it. And so with that in mind, I do kind of like circle back to these initial champions of Janna and Karma, and I'm curious if there isn't something in here that's supposed to work with these, because like I can kind of see some of the thought process to where, okay, on the first loop around, you take Janna because she's the most powerful champion, you take Yasuo because that's your thing. And then as the next set of picks come around, you pick Karma because she's the best Ionian champion left, and then you pick Katarina because she ties in with your Yasuo. That's fine. Like I get picks 1, 2, 3, 4, but on this like 5, 6 wheel, like what is the deal with Nocturne Fizz? I can't currently wrap my brain around what the thought process was with those champions, right? If you want to say take Nocturne with another Shadow Isles champion and play the Allegiance deck, I get that. If you want to take Fizz with, I think Yuumi was gone at this point, but if you want to take Fizz Yuumi to design that kind of deck, that makes sense. It's just kind of odd to me that these champions are kind of like spaced apart and broken apart, because as you roll through the next set of picks and you see Galio, Nico, like those champions don't work together. Like the formidable package with the beasts package is not a thing, and I don't see how those tie back in backwards. But as you get to his pick 9 and 10 and you see Udyr Lee Sin together, that's one of these spaces to where you say, oh, I can get that, right? I can understand putting Udyr with Lee Sin together. You want Overwhelm with Lee Sin. Udyr has the means to give it to him with the stance swaps. That's all good and well. And so, you know, I can kind of like come up with some decks that work with all of these things. You can play Udyr Fizz Bilgewater and have an Elusives deck with Spirits Unleashed. You can play Udyr with Galio we touched that. You can fit Udyr into Nocturne in various ways. Like, I can see some of these things, but none of these decks make direct sense to me. And so we'll kind of circle back to that concept in just a moment. The draft was strange to me, and trying to, deduce what he's most commonly going to bring. I would say that it's most certainly going to be this Yasuo Katarina every single time. But I think the interesting thing after that will be if he splits apart Janna and Karma. And if he does split them apart, how does that feel like it's going to have to go? Like, we'll come back to that, but it's something to kind of keep in mind. And so, first and foremost, my big thought is Yasuo Katarina. It's going to be in every single lineup he has. These champions don't play well with anything else, and so I feel pretty confident that we can design our lineup with Yasuo Katarina in mind. And so that's where this, next question kind of comes in is, does he have a real lineup that doesn't have this deck in it? And I don't think so. Like, you can say play, okay, Katarina with Nocturne, sure, but then you can just ignore Yasuo, okay, and then what are you going to do? Like, are you going to play Janna with Karma and then have one of these Udyr decks together? Like, I guess that's a thing, sure, but it feels like he's giving up an incredible amount of power level to not actually have that Katarina deck within the mix. And so I think that it's going to be in here every single time. And the kind of interesting thing with his lineup is going to be whether or not Janna is paired with Karma, or if he came up with a way to split them apart so that you don't have all of your eggs in one basket, right? And so what we mean with that is, like, if you want to imagine, say you drafted like Janna or Victor with pick 1, and then you drafted Zoe with pick 2, you're very obviously going to be playing a concurrent timelines deck. But if your opponent just bans that out every single time, are you really making the best usage of your champions? Like, probably not. And so that's my kind of thought process of a potential problem with Janna Karma. Is that's the kind of thing I would look to just ban out every time, because Yasuo Katarina is much more targetable. Up next, though, as the next kind of piece, is how do you want to go about tackling and attacking Yasuo Katarina? The way that you typically do it is with really aggro decks like Anti-Gen or Scouts or Pirates. Like, these really go wide style of decks tend to have some pretty favorable matchups there. If you think of what Yasuo Katarina is trying to do, it really wants to be playing against curve decks, and it really wants to be playing against OTK decks. And so the things that it has is just an absolute ton of single target removal with all of the stuns and all of the recalls and everything. And so if you're playing a curve deck like Elites, or if you're, say, playing a curve deck like concurrent timelines, then Yasuo Katarina has a bit of an advantage there. Or if you're playing something like an OTK all in on one unit style of deck, being able to have your opponent send in their OTK and then you go Steel Tempest, bounce spell, then they don't have any resources to try and OTK you again. And so that's the places where this is good. Tends to be bad against go wide aggro, tends to be kind of bad against major control decks that don't care about units, but that curve space is something that we really have to kind of stop and consider, because concurrent timelines fits in that curve space, right? If you're trying to play a concurrent timelines deck, you want to play timelines on 2, you want to play Weapon Master on 3, you want to play Weapon Master on 4, you want to play Trundle on 5, you want to play Revna on turn 6, turn 7 you play whatever expensive unit you have in your hand, and then turn 8 you play the Ice Pillar. You're just building directly up the curve, and Janna Yasuo wants to be like, okay, well, I'll block, it's turn 5, right? I'll block your 4-drop, stun your 5-drop, take like 2 damage, and then I'm going to get my Hillock on board and start tearing out pieces of your board, and then just have to cast spells on one unit. Like, they're very well tuned for that kind of thing. And so we are going to look towards kind of go wide aggro decks. Maybe we don't get to play as much concurrent timelines as we want. And then my thing with Yasuo Katarina is they haven't been a deck in a world of explorers. One of the real key components to the Yasuo Katarina deck is the Windswept Hillock. If we can design decks that just naturally want to have explorers in them, that gives us a way to just naturally take down a landmark, and also kind of side ties into taking down some of the Janna decks with Sunken Temples. And so I like the idea of having an absolute fuck ton of explorers in our decks, given that they should be quite good against Yasuo Katarina. They should be good against any of these other decks that are wanting to sport landmarks like Sunken Temple style decks. And then they have the potential to be quite good with the Quicksand ability as if he starts to bring things like Fizz OTK decks or Lee Sin based OTK decks. If you can quicksand away the overwhelm off of Lee Sin, it's much less damage that he's capable of doing. And so that's what I'm kind of like having in my head is what I want to do is I want to play a bunch of explorers and I want to play a bunch of go wide aggro decks. The next piece I should say is what is Jay Sensational going to be thinking about our lineup? It should be a lineup that has to bring at least one concurrent timelines deck. Very real possibility that he sees us bringing 2, maybe even 3 concurrent timelines decks. And so I think it's very easy in kind of leveling. If you're not familiar with leveling, that's where you start to say, I'm thinking about what you're thinking, and then I know what you're thinking that I'm thinking, so I'm going to react in the way that, it's like I know that you're going to do something, so I'm going to do something a little bit differently. And so I kind of feel like he's heavily incentivized to play against the concurrent timelines decks. I wouldn't be surprised if he brings a full lineup to counter it. And so that puts me in the kind of spot to where I feel like I only really want to bring one, right? If he comes at us with what looks to be a pretty reasonable lineup selection of Yasuo Katarina, which is again good against timelines, something like Janna Karma, which timelines just can't beat Karma decks. You can't beat them fast enough before she pops off on Enlightened. And then some kind of Udyr deck like a Lee Sin OTK or a Warden of the Tribes deck or a Galio Champion Strength. Those are all things that are going to function quite well against concurrent timelines. And so I think we just have to kind of pivot a little bit, right? So if we move down to our last section in this space, I don't want to be playing any damage-based concurrent timelines decks, right? If we suspect the concurrent timelines decks to be weak against what they're doing, and then if like Jax Vi is our main deck, and so he starts to include, say, more heal into his decks that are already good against curve decks, then I'm not going to feel too good in that space. Up next, I want to target Yasuo Katarina. I feel like we've already kind of touched off on that. And then I want to bring a lineup that feels pretty comfortable. You're just banning out the controliest control deck that they have. And so if he does have that Janna Karma deck, we can ban it. If he comes out with some kind of like really heal removal heavy, kind of like Janna, Udyr, Freylord, Ionia control deck, we're free to just kind of ban that out. And then I feel like we're in a good space to where we should have matchups that are good against Yasuo Katarina. And then we're in the space to where that mid-rangey space, if he brings a Galio deck, it's not super ideal. If he brings a Lee Sin OTK deck, it's not super ideal. But I feel like those matchups are all manageable. And so ideally, I think we'll find ourselves in a space to where his 2 high-powered champions and Janna Karma get paired off together, so we can just ban that out of the way. And then we're free to hopefully be favored against Katarina Yasuo with all of our decks, and then hopefully be coin flippy at best against everything else. And so I like that kind of idea in the sense that we aren't really polarized and just bringing a ton of timelines decks. And then if he does decide to bring some really weird like control package to where he has 3 Ionia decks, or if he pairs Nocturne off with Shadow Isles to start playing a bunch of like Ruination Eradicate decks, like I don't know what that looks like, but if he really goes kind of off the wall to come out and combat the concurrent timelines, I feel kind of good bringing like one version of it, but not bringing a ton. And then we're going to look towards that go wide aggro with everything else that we're doing. And so deck number 1, we're going to be playing Lulu Jinx. And so I had my head wrapped around at the very beginning of this. I wanted to play a high-powered aggro deck, especially in the early weeks. If you look at any ladder meta, the aggro decks don't have to be nearly as right as the control decks do in terms of the numbers within your deck to come out and get some wins. And so I feel like running out week 1 of this event with a really high-powered aggro Jinx deck has the chance to be kind of good, as to where it may not be as good week 7 or week 8 once people have really kind of tuned up their lineups. And so that's kind of piece number 1 to wanting to get this out here. I was intending to have Jinx paired off with Samira or paired off with Draven and play Rummage and use Rummage with Windborn Mariners and stuff. And that's where we really started with this deck, was playing with like Rummages and Suit Ups and all the elusives, but that didn't really do it for me. And so we moved on to this more kind of go wide elusives package with the Sneezy Biggledust to help kind of close out the games. And then we can still do the early game stuff with Lulu. And so if you're not familiar with the kind of big idea, the big draw that this deck is capable of pulling off, say on turn 1, we just don't play anything. We bank that 1 spell mana for Poro Cannon. Turn 2, we play Boom Baboon. Turn 3, we play Lulu. Right after we play Lulu, we're going to use the Poro Cannon to discard Flame Chompers. Now we get to attack for 5 damage. We get to challenge the opponent's biggest and best unit with this 4/4 Flame Chompers, and then we should be getting in for 5 points of damage. Then, as our next attack token rolls around on turn 5, we should be in this space to where we could put an elusive on the board. Now use Lulu to boost that elusive, get that in for 4 points of damage, and the Flame Chonkers can just hook whatever blocker the opponent has out of combat. This gets us in these like really powerful aggressive spaces to where it's very easy to burn the opponent out for like 6, 7, 8 points of damage. To get that burn damage going on, we have Jinx as one of our champions, the 3 copies of Get Excited, 2 copies of Blowback, 1 copy of Electro Harpoon. To tie back in with that Elusives package, we have a fair number within this deck. The Poro Cannon is a standby. Acorn is one of the newer cards of this style of strategy. A singular copy of Skip for a bit of interactivity that can still get boosted by a Lulu on turn 3. Octo Adventurer within that Explorer's plan that we're still looking to carry today, and Augmented Clocklink fitting out some of the new cards. And so while the Steezy Biggledust has been nerfed, and once it got nerfed to give 1/1 and 2/2 instead of 2/2 and 3/3, Jinx Lulu kind of fell off the map, but I feel like there's enough new additions to this style of deck between things like Eye of the Storm and Augmented Clocklink giving it some depth that I think that it has a lot of potential to really come out. And again, playing these high-powered aggro decks on week 1, a very powerful space to be in. And so deck number 2, Tristana Poppy. This is one that I actually expect to pop off quite a bit in the upcoming Eternal season. If you caught the patch notes on the balance patch, it had some very standard irrelevant notes. And what I mean by those is Yordle Explorer now has 3 health, and Portal Pioneer is now a Yordle. And so this gives us just this massive combo of cards that we can use within Bandle City. If you want to stop and take a quick peek at some of these units, both Tristana and Poppy are Yordles. Bandle Commando's a Yordle. The Portal Pioneer, the Yordle Explorer, the Bandle City Mayor, and down here with the Tenor of Terror. Just this easy collection of Yordles to get with this now very combat-relevant Yordle Explorer that just doesn't die to every Mystic Shot in the world. The other kind of piece of this deck is the multi-faction thing that you get with Tristana and the Bandle City Mayor, and there is still a lot of very powerful tie-in with this stuff. In the past, you typically had to pick, okay, I'm going to play Yordles, or okay, I'm going to play multi-faction, but now as we look at this deck, the Tenor of Terror is both a Yordle and a multi-faction, and then the new Portal Pioneer is the same thing. It's both a Yordle and a multi-faction, and so this should be just like this really high-powered, concise collection of cards that we can get on the board very quickly, and then boost Scout style like we see in Standard constructed right now. And so the main idea that we have with this deck is we're going to flood the board with stats very quickly. Then we're going to boost all of those stats, whether or not it's with Poppy or with Vanguard Sergeant or with the Yordle Explorer. Or over on the right side, we have the full 3 copies of Inspired Light and then the big champion Strength. And so if our opponent is trying to set up board in a very curved style of fashion, we should be able to overwhelm them with stats very quickly. Now, one of the things that I really like about this deck that you don't get out of a deck like Scouts in Standard right now is a lot of these cards are just massive value generators. And so the Bandle Commando generates the Owlcats on strike, the Grandfather Fae generates an Owlcat, the Portal Pioneer generates the Explorer spell, the Bandle City Mayor generates a unit, the recently upgraded Loping Telescope generates a unit, and the Vanguard Sergeant generates a unit. And so while in Standard, it's very easy to just kind of flood the board and then run out of stuff to do, out here in the lands of Eternal with all of these powerful Bandle City cards, it's quite common to flood the board and then still have 4 and 5 cards in the hand. So if the opponent starts to develop a better board, it's quite easy to come in and refill. And so I'm quite happy with this. This has a lot of the things that I'm really looking for in terms of being strong against Yasuo Katarina. It does have the Portal Pioneers in here, so we have access to our Explorers for that landmark destruction. I'm playing the full set of Grandfather Faes and Bandle Commandos to generate the Owlcats. Having access to those spell-shielded units can be quite strong as we're trying to negate our opponent's concussive palms and negate some of their more expensive interactive spells. And I think that this combo all plays together quite nicely. And last but not least, we have Caitlyn, Trundle, Vi. So we are going to be bringing one concurrent timelines deck, but I have designed this in a way that hopefully it can come up and beat up on Yasuo just a little bit more. And so some of the new cards that have made their way into this deck, Miriam has made her way in. This is one of the new cards out of the Janna set. Another fantastic addition in terms of this deck can draw a lot of the wrong cards in the wrong order. You want the concurrent timelines early. You want your 6 drops late. Miriam with the updraft ability really helps in those terms. But the big theme I found with Miriam is her usage with concurrent timelines. You know, one of the kind of really big pain points you would run with this deck is you don't play anything on the first turn. You play concurrent timelines on turn 2, and then on turn 3, you're trying to catch back up. You really need to hit a good unit so your opponent doesn't overwhelm you. But if you're wanting to just come down and play Miriam for spell mana, that gets you in these spots to where you can start to play your burn spells, tap out of your mana, and then replace a lot of that spell mana with Miriam. And so I feel like she has a lot of really interesting combos within this deck, and her ability to be a good early game blocker, her ability to cycle away cards that turned up at an inopportune time, and then her ability to also just generate spell mana to get you, back into a safe space. It's a lot of times most certainly okay to just throw away a card so that you can continue on your curves of getting Revnas and the like on the board. She's been a fantastic addition into this space. Tying into that same kind of idea, we're playing 2 copies of Octo Adventure. Again, the Explorer package makes its way into the concurrent timelines deck, but one of the interesting spaces here is both the Octo Adventure and the Piltover Castaway have a tune. And so, again, with some of that catch-up mechanic we're looking to do, we can play the concurrent timelines on turn 2. Then on turn 3, we can play a Piltover Castaway or an Octo Adventurer, get that attuned mana back, potentially cast something like Mystic Shot, but then as we move into turn 3, if we play another 3-drop at that point, then we have the full 3 spell mana for things like Aftershock to hopefully stem any of the aggressive tide that the opponent is sending at us. Otherwise, a pretty straightforward set of common cards within the deck at that point. The 3 copies of Combat Cook is fairly standard. I like Aloof Travelers, as I expect the opponent's decks to be a little bit more on the slower side of things. Sniping their most expensive card can be quite good. And then Revna is our big mid-game play. The next thing I really wanted to talk about in here is we do have quite a bit of landmark destruction between the Octo Adventurer generating the Explorer's spell, the It That Stares being able to blow up landmarks. Your opponent doesn't have to been buried under the ice to blow up all their landmarks. You can just play It That Stares and try and destroy a Windswept Hillock. And then we have Aftershock within our removal suite. It's a card that's capable of killing Katarina. It can kill that 1/3 that gains bonus attack whenever something recalls, and then it can also blow up Windswept Hillocks. And so we have that kind of in mind. In terms of the other matchups that we're expecting to go against, I did include the 2 copies of Harsh Winds, 1 copies of Three Sisters in the event that we do have to play against a Lee Sin-based OTK style of deck. Ideally, we will have a Flash Freeze on that turn to get a shutdown on him, and then we have the 2 copies of Buried in Ice, not just for the It That Stares combo, but as another way to potentially remove a big Warden to the Tribes-based board. And so there you have it. Those are the decks we're about to take into battle, but you know what we have to do before the battles begin. We got to pay that pay-to-win price, and it's kind of tough. I was thinking we were going to be able to come out here and just purchase some champion skins or something, but all of our decks are already championed out. We got the full set of Star Guardians within Lulu Jinx. We got the Battle Academia, and then the Elf Tristana over within the Trundle deck. We have both the Gilded Caitlyn and the Gilded Vi, and so we can't go that big because these are all decks that we play with a fair amount of frequency. But in terms of the new cards, we do have a Miriam out here to go and turn premium. This is one of the cards that I'm surprised we haven't turned premium at this point, but it's mainly just because she's epic. We've played quite a bit of her over standard. I expect to see her quite a bit in the Champion Draft Series and the upcoming Eternal formats alike, and so very safe upgrade. Miriam, welcome to the premium space. Now let's jump in, take a look at Jay Sensational's decks. All right, so Jay Sensational's deck lists have been posted. He has Katarina, Yasuo, Udyr, Galio, and then Nocturne, Janna. And so, as we mentioned the whole way through, we're planning on playing against Katarina, Yasuo. There's nothing too crazy in here. It looks like a fairly stock kind of list. It does have things like Unworthy Soul in it, which I'm not certain how common is, but We're not really playing equipment anyways, so it's not that big of a deal. Rejuvenating Breeze is one of the newer additions to this style of deck. And so, again, I feel pretty decent leaving this one up. We have a lot of answers to these Windswept Hillocks. Hopefully this one will go pretty okay. And up next, we have Udyr Galio. This looks pretty similar to what you would see in Standard. You do get the additions of things like Troll Chant now that we're in the space of Eternal, and then Captain Erica up at the top end. But the big thing with this list is it only has one copy of Champion Strength in it. The ones running around in Standard typically play 2, maybe 3 copies of the Champion Strength, and then his removal suite is the Gentleman's Duels, which is the new card for it, but only 1 copy of Single Combat, and then no copies of Concerted Strike. And so this is one of the decks that I was initially concerned with, but with how our deck is tuned, I don't worry about it nearly as much. Although we are, playing elusives into blocking Badger Bear, which can be kind of problematic, but it's not a list to where he has both Omen Hawk and blocking Badger Bear to really shut down that Jinx list. Last but not least, the surprise one to me is going to be Janna Nocturne. It looks like this is a Sentinels control deck with the Burgeoning Sentinel and the Buru Sentinel getting boosted as you play removal spells. And I think I'm pretty fine with this one. There's no Karma in here to really take over that late game. It's not playing things like the thing that makes the 30-30 cat, whatever that's called, that the Seraphine decks play. There's no like real top end in this deck that I'm scared of. And so I feel like if we have to run concurrent timelines into either the Janna Nocturne or the Udyr Galio, we don't have to worry about those really like super big plays at the end of the game that can kind of come in and shut us down. And so, as far as these go from his perspective, I'm curious what his ban is going to be. There's the Timelines deck, the Jinx aggro elusives decks, and then the Poppy deck. I'm not quite certain to where it's going to go, but I think I feel fairly comfortable in terms of playing against all of these. And so as far as our ban goes, like I feel like the Nocturne Janna deck is just like a little bit underpowered. It does have a fair amount of removal with it, with the Piercing Darknesses and the Vengeances, but I don't feel like there's enough AoE removal for me to be really scared about any of the decks that we're bringing. And then up here in the cheap removal space, it does get a little bit scarier. Like there's the 2 copies of Vile Feast along with things like Quietus, and so it can be a bit problematic for dropping things like Acorn onto the board, but I think we line up with this pretty well. And so I'm looking to just come in and ban out Udyr Galio. I think this is the one that has the potential to just give us the most trouble between having the interactive broad wings, and it just feels like it's the deck that has the more consistent good draws, right? And so I think this is the one that we'll be looking to ban, and then we're going to come out here and do battle against Janna Nocturne. All right, and off we go. Where is that? Week 1 deck, week 1 deck, week 1 deck. All right. Jump on into battle. Double check that. Week 1, week 1, week 1. All right, good to go. Good stuff. Yeah, I think I'm at least moderately confident in this. The worry I have with this is the matchup between the Jinx deck and the Janna deck, and so we'll see if that's what gets to stay up. I would suspect, my suspicion is that, like, the most common ban is probably going to be just banning out Trundle. And then going from there, he's just going to be going up against our 2 very unit-heavy decks, which, I feel pretty decent about. Again, everything into Yasuo. I would think of like all of the potential matchup combinations, though, that the Jinx deck into Janna is the worst one that we have. But we'll see who stays up, see who the ban gets dropped on. Maybe he's afraid of the big aggro. He says, "Bust, you're not gonna come at me with those flipped Jinx right away." And so we'll see. We'll see who gets to stay up. I'm excited to find out. Okay, making the big decisions. It's tough. It's tough. He says, "Oh no, I was not expecting such greatness to be coming at me." So many So many spectacular champions and deck lists coming at. Oh man, this is scary stuff. That's probably exactly what's going through his head, you know. Very, very, very worrisome lineup coming at you. I didn't think the Boom Baboon Flame Chompers deck was gonna be in style. But all right, the clock's ticking down. Let's see. Oh, he bans out the Jinx deck. All right, and so what I was thinking to myself was I probably just want to lead off with Poppy Tristana. That was the one that I felt, you know, kind of most confident in winning all of the games with, and so we'll give it a go to start with. See if we just immediately battle Yasuo. That's the way it's meant to be, right? Absolutely. So let's see how it goes. All right, so the way I like to start off these games with the Yordles deck is just to keep all of the unit boosters and then just mulligan everything else away. And so I'm going to hang on to Tristana. I'm going to hang on to Yordle Explorer. Tristana should be a fairly safe early play in this style of match anyways. And so there's a very real chance that we just drop her on turn 3 and say, you know, do you have the answers? Do you have the ways to stop this? Because looking, you know, at his lineup, the only real removal spells he's going to have is Yasuo stunning stuff and then the 3 copies of Ravenous Flock. And so if we're able to get this Tristana on board, you know, he has to drop a stun and a Ravenous Flock to take her down. And so, you know, she can be pretty safe in that sense. Let's see. At the end of the day, it's probably a pretty greedy approach. And you can't block here, right? The little dude's going to turn into a big dude as soon as the block is delivered. All right, but let's start in with the Yordles now. We could have led off with the Bandle Commando to have gotten the block on the thing, but I think I'm still happy enough to just get this little bit of aggro going and get this big board going. I just kind of feel like the fastest we can get up to 6 units, the more problematic it's going to be for him. So it is a bit unfortunate he has this this nice blocker, and the Fey Blade Twirler keeps our Yordle Explorer at home. But after this turn, we should be pretty good to go in terms of churning out these stats. Now, with this space, I would like to get the Outcat up to 3. So I think we just have to pass. It's just, it starts to get a little bit awkward in terms of the rest of our mana if we don't play the Outcat here. But I mean, I guess we can look to say play the Grandfather Fey this turn, the double Outcats, and then move into the next turn and look to drop Tristana Portal Pioneer. Or that's probably not how we want to sequence, right? We'd like to get this Portal Pioneer on board now. Let it just go ahead, come in and get a block. We can add the Grandfather Fey afterwards, and then next turn we can do Tristana Double Bird along with an Inspired Light. I think that looks a lot better. So I'm going to play the Pioneer, take the Landmark Destruction. You don't even really have to block here. I think we'll probably just take again. Try and go big next turn, right? Gonna get these 4 power owls on the board. Gonna get this Inspired Light. Everybody's gonna be ready to strike. I dig it.
Love it, Big Mama. Let's bring this home.
Let's be real. That was a pretty clutch draw in the Tristana turning up, giving us the opportunity to Buster Shot onto the Blade Twirler. So it's pretty cool, if you ask me. So do we think she's going to get Ravenous Flocked? I think that's fine. I think I'd still like to just go ahead and take this unit off of the board. If he's spending Ravenous Flock, that's pretty much the end of his turn, right? He's not going to be doing too much more after that, and so we get in the Buster Shot. He can't play any of his combat tricks now. The only thing he's limited to is going to be that Ravenous Flock. Where we have Bird. Inspired Light. And then Combat.
Good show. I alone decide my fate.
Okay. So it's going to roll into this next turn. He will get to use the Hillock this round, which is going to take down the Tristana. We can look to destroy the Hillock with the excavation if he has a Katarina come in, right? She's going to be a bit problematic in terms of getting the multiple stuns out of the Hillock. So we will have to try and remove that before she comes back down again. See if we're able to do that. So we definitely want to take the big block here. The question is, you know, how much more damage can we really take this turn? He can definitely get another rally out of Katarina. We probably want to just go ahead and take this safe block with the Vanguard Sergeant onto her. It would, you know, be able to kill off the Sergeant with the Blade's Edge, but I think it's probably just a little bit more important to not die here. And so I'm going to go ahead and throw that one forward. Then we'll follow up with the Hillock after this combat, or the champion, the thing, the landmark destruction after this combat. So he's in the spot to where he's either going to have to deny the excavation, or he's going to have to, you know, play Katarina. Oh, I can't even play Katarina this turn. I swore she cost 3. She's 3 on the front side, 4 on the back. Oh my gosh, it's been too long. It's been too long, friends. Alright, so do we ever want to champion strength next turn? It might be our only way out of this if we want to, say, attack with the commando and then champion strength and attack again. I think that's the kind of space that we're stuck in. To a degree, we could look to just play 4 Demacia, but I'm not really liking that. The other option we have is to just flood the board. We do have all of these Owlcats. We'll get another Owlcat off the Bandle Commando. And so we can look at that as a bit of potential. But, like, how dead are we if he has the deny? Because he's going to be able to just immediately follow up with the Katarina. And that should be able to end the game. So I think we're stuck just adding Owlcats to this board. And then we'll see if we can't punch in with 4 Demacia and at least be a little bit safer in terms of dropping blocks here. Now with this, as I say, if he doesn't add any more cards to the board, how do we feel about just passing, right? I don't think that's going to be in the cards now. I'm just going to play this. I'm just going to play this for Demacia so we have good attackers. But there was definitely some potential there to just pass and let him soak all that mana. Good thing we didn't go for the champion strength against the stun deck, huh? That turned out kind of okay, I guess. Would have been a huge shutdown onto the Bandle Commando. All right, birds get big. Alright, Yasuo sails away. He's got another one in hand. Not too crazy to see that happen. See how the penultimate turn comes together here. See if he can finish us off. See if our blockers will do it. Whew. He's gonna go for an attack. We just dead? We're very close to just dead. Oh, we are just going to die next turn, aren't we? It's going to zing us with those Blade's Edges. GG.
It's just an egg.
Man, that's definitely a bummer to be dropping games to the Yasuo deck. That's the one that we were hoping to take down. Give him a little GG. See if we can't recover against Janna. I believe in you, Tristana. You can do it. I believe. All right, so how do we start here? With this, I'm not as inclined to just take all the unit boosting things since this deck does just have the giant removal pile in it. Coming out of the gates, I'm looking to probably just hang on to Bandle City Mayor here. As long as we pick up another 2-drop, we'll be pretty fine, and we'll get 5 draws at it, so it's not too crazy to have that kind of thing happen. Now we have a pretty reasonable curve here. See how long it takes for these Bandle Commandos to get gunned down, but definitely not amped about this double champion strength start. I think I'm going to lead with the Yordle Explorer. It's just so much safer against the majority of his removal spells. It survives Quietus, it survives Mystic Shot. It doesn't survive Soul Harvest, but everything except Soul Harvest the dude would have survived through. Alright, Bandle City Mayor can come in. Again, I'd like to just pick a fairly big value unit if we could. The Spectral Surveyor kind of fits, but I'm kind of leaning towards just taking Bomber Twins. It survives all the removals except Mystic Shots. The Landmark may be relevant, especially if you can spike, say, like the Targon one that draws you 2 cards. But I'm kind of looking at next turn being able to play both Bomber Twins and the Bandle Commando. And then still having a couple mana backed up if we pick up another 2-cost spell. I just don't think the Spectral Surveyor is super important right at this moment. And now if the Mayor gets taken down. Interesting. And say if the Mayor gets taken down, we can still play all of our removal spell or play all of our units. Oh, the Sun Disk. That's what we needed. That's what we needed. And man, that's annoying with the elusive unit coming on board just as we're trying to come in with the Bandle Commando. Ugh. Nasty. So are we going to be willing to trade here? I think we just have to kind of preserve our units at this point. You know, we have all of these unit boosting cards in hand, and I feel like just throwing a unit into a trade is not the way that we're going to be finding success in this game. So let's continue on the value plan. We'll take the Loping Telescope. That's got to turn into an Ionian Hookmaster as well. I don't think Harrowing Return. Well, is the Bandle City Mayor? I don't have it pulled up here. Where's he at? He's not a summon ability, right? Yeah, he's a play ability, so we can't Harrowing Return the Bandle City Mayor back. Gotcha.
Well, I did say I wanted to see the
Burgeoning Sentinel comes down, ready to grow. See what the Hookmaster brings. I don't really want the Hookmaster just hanging out with 1 point of health, and so let's just load her up with the Shepherd's Authority. We don't really need to be working anytime soon anyways. So we'll just pick up the one that has, the most stats at this point.
Fill your lungs and cry.
And Janna comes in. I'm leaning towards just going ahead and dropping this Buster Shot. The downside with this is if we want to Inspired Light next turn, we're not going to have the mana to do it. I mean, maybe that's reason enough to not pull the trigger.
Storm unrelenting.
Oh, the champion strength, though. we'll try and get one of those down next turn. Let's see how that goes. As long as our units are down here surviving, that should be okay. And this is gonna be critical right here if we can get our Poppy to survive. Right? He doesn't have a lot of spells that can naturally take her off of the board, and so if we can stick this Poppy and then get the unit boost off the Inspired Light, I'm gonna feel pretty good about this. Oh, the Vengeance gonna roll through. That's not cool. Not cool. So again, I don't really want to be trading away our units. I'm fine with just sending in the Hookmaster and the Commando. Again, like, we need our units to survive so it can get into combats with these 3 champion strengths that we have now. And so we should definitely be able to start dropping, you know, more champion strength the next turn. We'll have the 7 mana. We can pivot if we pick up something interesting. Grandfather Fae is kind of interesting. But it just feels like our power level is all tied into getting these champion strengths up and running. And if we get to play one here and just clear out a ton of board, that just seems like a huge win to me. All right, Reggie's doing the blocking. Cleared out 3 of them. Got in a pretty healthy chunk of damage. Yeah, that gets us into a nice spot for this next turn, I think. As long as we can dodge the Ruinations. He's played 2 Reggies, right? He plays 1 Ruination naturally, and then he has 2 Reggies that he's played. So we have to worry about them a little bit. I didn't catch if that Piercing Light was a Reggie one or a deck one. I would like to, you know, kind of know if Reggie's just not that scary anymore. Let's see. I want to build up more board, so I'm going to go for the Buster Shot, take his good blocker away, and then we'll try and build up more Owls, get those Spell Shielders on the board, and then we can champion Strength again next turn. Bust had a little top deck there. Not going to get him that easy. Owlcat online, we'll get the birds online. If we end up losing a bird in this combat, I don't feel terrible about it. Well, it just seems like next turn's so much better. Let's just go ahead and swing. I think we can probably safely play the second bird after this, though. It's like he really needs something like Ruination to get out of this mess. And if he Ruinates while we have the Spell Shield birds on the board, we just win the game with Champion Strength. And so I think that's okay.
The Zephyr heralds the squall.
Picking up another Grandfather Fae is kind of cool as well. These Spell Shieldy birds like to party, you know. They like to come out here and have some fun. Alright, this looks like it's probably going to be a progress day. We can drop the Champion Strength, take it on to a game 3. Say no 2-0s onto Bust today. Can't take him down that easy. Can't do it that easy. You get your games with the Yasuos, but we can force it to a game 3. Whew, I was worried about that, man. I was worried about that triple champion strength turning up. It's just, you know, if you're sitting around with one unit, champion strength doesn't do anything. And so, all right. Take the old Trundle into the clutch match. See what's up. All right, nice. You got that concurrent timelines in the opener. That's what the people want to see. And so let's get rid of these combat-oriented cards. I don't feel like they are, a huge necessity right here at the start. I'm not opposed to Harsh Winds in this match, right? He can have some fairly nasty Epic Scrap Traption kind of draws, but it's not a necessity, and we just picked up the easier discard in the timelines. All right, the curve is turning up. Ready to party. J Sensational quote as we put the timelines on the board. Fuck. I don't know. I don't know if he uses curse language or not, but that's what I assume just happened. Now, as far as these go, we can pick up Affectionate Poro. It might, I don't know, barely kill something. Well, I guess the Yordle Squire can get into a fight with this burgeoning Sentinel. It's just everything dies to a vile feast, which is kind of a bummer. But I don't think we have too much room to complain given how the timeline's turned up on time. So Castaway comes in. I think I'm gonna go with the combat reel. Ooh, I mean, Scout Rakes are always just so good, but I like just picking up that little bit of extra health that we can get out of this. And then as far as the units go, probably just pick up the Scholarly Pioneer. The Lounging Lizard's going to eventually die. The Faithful Wolf Dog doesn't get any of his bonus abilities. Go with the Pioneer. And it is kind of nice to pick up the Pioneer when we have Station Archivist in our hand, and so I think I'm okay with that. Give us an opportunity to cast that spell a little bit later. Alright, all the Mystic shots turning up. I'll zing your Clockling, don't worry about that. Who do we got? Aloof can become the classic Ancient Crocolith. Time to start dropping BMs. Hit the Vengeance out of his hand. Gotta be feeling a little sad about those outcomes. Just Timelines decks doing Timelines things, you know. Combat Cook coming in. We'll load up the Fix'em 5000 with this one. He has that dude on board that may be looking to block. Eminent Benefactor is a reasonable pickup here. Get the Last Breath, that epic into hand. All right, let's battle. What a joke Timelines is. Did you all ever wonder why I decided that we would bring 2, maybe 3 concurrent Timelines decks to this event? It's games like this. It's games like this. Just sending in that almost lethal. All of our 7-power friends running through. Alright. Good. Cat. Had a cat meowing. The important things we're focusing on this match. Alright, let's bring it back in, get a little focus in here. I'd prefer to not be playing Mystic Shots like onto the Scrapaway thing. We are actually getting kind of close to that lethal, but on the other side of the coin here, our hand does really kind of suck, and so we need to have a decent top deck or two along the way. Now, this is kind of interesting with the Rock Bear Shepherds. He can pick up that 5/5, but without any other units in hand, I don't think I'm really interested in that. Why didn't we? Oh, we just don't have any spells in our top 5. Okay, I was like, what? Where was our dude? Where was our pick, our choice? Okay. All right. Well, I want to try and get this attack in as fast as we can, so I'm just going to start dropping stuff on the board. The combat reel's kind of interesting. He's out of he has 1 Vengeance left, and so maybe we can put it on the big unit in this space. Since it's going to be a little tougher to kill, I don't want to put the combat reel onto the Squire and then have him just Mystic Shot it down.
The Zephyr heralds the squall.
Maryam. Right, we'll send away Buried in Ice. Doesn't seem like it's going to be active anytime soon. Might as well pick the Puffcap Pup. Second Maryam comes in. We'll wait till next turn for her. Might find ourselves with a 3 Sisters kill this round.
Don't underestimate me.
Is this enough? Like, I think we can just send everybody. if he has one combat trick to, or one removal spell to stop one of these guys on the end, it's not super believable. And then we can just come in and take down Janna if we want. I don't think we even really want to. Alright. Just get those puff caps in the deck and call it a day. Oh, he's a play ability now? What a dumb card. This guy used to be a last breath ability. I highlighted him to see why he didn't have any highlights on him. Oh my god, what a dumb card. I wonder when they changed that. Maybe we have played that guy in timelines like once. Manifest and Epic. Huh. All right.
Well, I did say I wanted to see the world.
So we can lead off with the Piltover Castaway. I think we'll just continue on with that same deal as to where, you know, let's just pick up the stats for this guy. Over here we have the impact unit. It's got the most stats. The impact gets us a little bit closer in the sense as long as we have one unblocked unit and then we get the impact, we can crash in for a lethal at that point as well. Updraft, please.
I'm here in Janna's name.
I don't think we're gonna need that anytime soon. Now, we're really, you know, motivated to play the Zonite Urchin this turn. If we pick up a real unit next turn, we're gonna want to play it under the timelines. And if we play the Zonite Urchin first next turn because we want to cycle, that's all around pretty awkward. I'm not certain what we really want to be doing in this space. I mean, we can play it post-combat, if that's what it really comes down to. And he's just going to let us clear out all these blockers? Interesting. Let's keep our big unit around. We still have a ton of mana, so we can re-equip the thing onto Mariam. Or we could just discard it. I mean, the combat reel isn't that big of a deal at this point.
Anything helps.
Pick up Caitlyn. Not the Revna that we're looking for. Alright, this is starting to get a little scary. We went on a bit of a weird run there in the middle, not producing what we wanted. Now, this is looking a little bit better. Who do we get to pick out of here? Rummel? He seems like a game breaker to me. Alright, clear out most of the board. We got our big spell shieldy overwhelm bro. Looks like he's doing a little bit of digging with the Reggie. Send it. And the puff cap. That was the key. The puff cap pup coming through at the end of the day. Drop the GG. Make it through the event with a W. Oof. You always gotta worry. You always gotta worry. Everyone in this event, much higher technical quality of player than me. So, take down a victory feels pretty good. And so, again, you know, not a bad set of matches. That went kind of the exact opposite as I should have hoped. We should have really known better, right? We should probably have not just gone up against Jay Sensational's Yasuo. It's Icarus flying a little too close to the sun, huh? And you get a little bit too close, the wax starts to melt. You come crashing down to earth, and your best of laid plans don't make it at the end of the day. And so that piece didn't work out, but thankfully we still had a good lineup left against the Janna deck. What I felt like was our worst matchup against Janna, didn't have to do battle against it, and able to squeak out a victory there at the end. And so, good stuff. I hope you enjoyed week 1 of the Champion Draft Series. The other matches, I'm not certain when everyone is posting them. I know the main channel plans on posting them throughout the week. I believe Majin Bay played Sir Termund, and then I forget who the other matches were this week, but a lot of exciting ones going out there if you want to check those out. But nonetheless, good set of games. I had fun with that. I hope you did too, because that is going to do it for us today. So if everyone enjoyed the video, hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way and had a good time watching. This is Bust and me. Thank you for being here.